No, 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 no. Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency, Mr. Mayor. And remember, you are in Woodland today.
Can we cancel that? Exactly what everybody in Woodland fears.
Always knew this was a Davis takeover.
Oh, man. All right. Okay, very good.
It's you that's trying to develop all that land between Davis and Woodland.
Yes, that's right. For lack of a quorum, we will not be meeting today. But fortunately, I do have good colleagues here. All right, take two. Welcome everybody to the November 21st meeting of the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency. I'm Joe Cravosa, and I have no hometown either in Davis or Woodland any longer. Great. Roll call. Vice Chair Marble.
Present.
And Director Davies. Very good. And Director Lee, Brett Lee from Davis, sends his regrets that he's not able to be with us here today. I'd like to seek approval of the agenda. Ask our General Manager, Dennis Deemer, is there anything we need to adjust on the agenda?
And no adjustments.
Okay. All right. Moved by
Second.
Director Davies, seconded by Vice Chair Marble. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. We'll go now to public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to address us on an item that's not on the agenda, or if you are not able to stay for the agenda item? Okay. There being none, we'll move to agency business, and we're going to go into a closed session now, and we will reemerge. Is there a time estimate, Dennis?
Probably 15, 20 minutes, I would guess.
Okay, good.
I like to say, you and Bill stayed. All right.
That naive. Okay, welcome everybody. We return from closed session. We welcome Sid England from UC Davis joining up here for the meeting, and we'll go to item 2 now. This is consent items, our October 10 meeting minutes and project financing update and first quarter treasurer's
Excuse
report.
me, Joe. Just before we move on, just let the record reflect that there was no action to be disclosed from the closed session.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you very much, Dick. All right. With that, consent items. Could I have a motion to approve the items on consent?
Move approval.
Okay. Moved by Vice Chair Marble, second by Director Davies. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved. Project update. Dennis, welcome up.
So we have just a brief update for you this afternoon. I want to just talk about a few accomplishments that have been realized in the last month, talk about upcoming milestones, and then I wanted to spend just a couple minutes updating you on the project cost. Primarily, we've taken the final price from CH2M Hill and reflected that in our overall project cost. And then we'll talk about the schedule. So we continue to pursue SRF loans. Not much has changed in either of the two loan applications. We have an application with the Clean Water SRF through the State Board. $211 million application is in. The one item of update is that the State Water Resources Control Board this past Tuesday did approve blanket authority for issuing 30-year loans. So the next step in that process is they need to get approval from EPA for that to go forward, and they anticipate about a 45 to 60-day approval process for that to happen. But things are looking good in terms of the State Board being able to issue 30-year loans. We've talked about the Safe Drinking Water SRF at our previous meeting. Woodland's application has been revised to $140 million for their portion of the regional facilities as well as local facilities. And Davis would need to consolidate with CSA like North Davis Meadows in order to be eligible for that SRF funding source. We continue to pursue the federal and state funding, grant funding for the joint intake. Based on the recent trip that Vice Chair Marble and I took to Washington, D.C. last week, I think it's safe to say that the outlook is quite positive for receipt of the remaining $3 million in federal funds. And we continue to pursue state funding for the joint intake. $6.7 million outstanding, and the goal there is to have the remaining $6.7 million in funds included in the governor's proposed FY15 budget. Bill?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is because of sequestration and the need for a continuing resolution again in January, if I understood correctly from our meetings, that's really the only hiccup that we hope will not take place, but the only thing that potentially could cause some disruption in the funding.
Right.
Political unknown.
Some progress on our contract for construction quality assurance services. We had received SOQs from 4 firms back in October. Since that time, we shortlisted 3 of the firms, invited them to submit proposals and interviewed them. This past Tuesday, we held, or actually past Monday, we held interviews with the 3 firms and have tentatively selected the firm of Somas to provide those services, and we hope to bring back a contract at the December board meeting for your consideration. Some good news on the biological opinion front. As we reported before, we had received the biological opinion from Fish and Wildlife Service some time ago. We are waiting for the biological opinion from NIMS, the National Marine Fisheries Service. That has been received. There is one provision that they've included in the biological opinion that requires the agency and RD 2035 to submit an annual fish notification plan. As we understand it, it's basically they're looking for voluntary actions that ourselves and Reclamation District 2035 would take to further protect species. It's kind of an unprecedented requirement that they've placed in this biological opinion, so we're in the process of seeking clarification as to exactly what they're looking for and identifying any issues or concerns that we and 2035 might have with that. We did receive the FONSI from the Bureau.
Yeah, Dennis, this is pause. I mean, are they talking about like operations of the
Yes.
intake or something like that? That like
They're
not too many hours per day, or
they're looking a good example that has come up in our discussions as well. You know, in certain years, could you switch to more groundwater? That kind of a thing.
Okay.
Switch to more groundwater, less use of surface water and more use of groundwater.
Okay. I mean, as written, that suggests we're supposed to notify the fish, but I think
Well, that's why I put it in quotation marks. It's kind of a unique acronym.
I was wondering, it's something new. Something new I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Buy a bunch of scuba gear.
Fish. Sid's on that. Good. Good. So,
The interesting thing with that
text
provision
them.
is, in addition to it raising the interest of ourselves in RD 2035, and we're definitely on the same page in terms of wanting to understand exactly what it
Yeah.
means. It's also caught the attention of the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation because they want to understand if this is going to become a precedent or something that they can expect in all of their other biological opinions that they're going to have to deal with other water contracts. So the three of us, the agency, Reclamation District 2035, and U.S. Bureau are all working together to get the clarification that we
I'm
need.
just curious, that this is for voluntary further steps.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So it's not to reduce something they've identified already as a significant impact. It's what more can you do?
Right.
It's interesting.
When in our assessment, it's a bit of an overreach in terms of what they're legally authorized and required to opine on, but it's something that they've asked for on a voluntary basis.
I mean, just hypothetically for a second, could the plan be there are no actions we can take?
That's what we're hoping to clarify and get them to define for us.
Well, beyond that, the obvious is that we're only doing this project to get off of groundwater on the municipal end. So you're telling us to use more groundwater.
Right.
Yeah.
well, right, and then in relationship to the facility that was there, obviously that's part of it. But then the state of the art is being installed for the fish screen. I mean, anyhow, all right, you guys know the arguments. So, all right.
Yeah.
So
Is it truly going to turn out?
we did get the finding of no significant impact from the Bureau, which is another very important step in the overall permitting process. We have completed the microbial aerosol study has been completed. That's on your agenda for later today. And we do continue to work with RD 2035 on the issues that are shown on the screen here. We continue to work with PG&E for identifying the specific improvements in the cost for service at the Regional Water Treatment Facility and at the joint intake. RD 2035 has pre-qualified now 4 contractors for the intake construction. Kiewit, Balfour Beatty, Ovra, and Ziblon Reed. Those 4 contractors very well qualified to do the intake work. The fact that we have 4 pre-qualified, we're hoping to get very good competition when that project goes out to bid in December. And we continue to coordinate with Montgomery Watson Harza regarding our equipment being included at the intake facility site and also including the SRF requirements in the contract documents.
Sorry, Dennis, but the RD 2035 is managing the intake facility contract?
Yes.
Completely.
Yes.
So this is just giving us an update. We're not going to have anything to do with the RFP there or the
No, they've been
selection or anything. Yeah.
That's right. They've been very closely coordinating with us, keeping us informed. We will have an action on the board's agenda in January, I believe, when we do get the bids, just to check in with the board to make sure that we're satisfied with the bid results before they go ahead and award the contract.
Okay.
Upcoming activities over the next few months, we'll continue, obviously, to pursue our SRF low-interest loans. The latest information that we've received from the two funding agencies is December or January. The Clean Water SRF staff have told us it's likely January, given the remaining work that needs to get done. There's some chance that the Safe Drinking Water Act, which is the Woodland application, may come as early as December. And then obviously we'll also continue to work on obtaining the remaining state and federal commitments for our grant funds at the intake. We, as part of your operations agreement that you'll consider later on, we have reached an agreement with RD 2035 on the use of the WAPA power. What still remains is working with WAPA to set up the mechanism whereby the agency can share in that low-cost source of power. We have two additional agreements beyond the one that's on your agenda today to complete with RD 2035, and we've also identified injection testing for the Woodland ASR program as something that will be happening in the next few months. You see, this list of outstanding or remaining permits is shrinking, which is a good thing. We have two major permits that we need to complete, the 404 permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and then the state 401 water quality certification. Both of those are teed up, and as we resolve this issue with the biological opinion, we expect that we'll have those in the next month or two. We have to begin negotiations for the purchase of environmental mitigation credits. These are credits where we have to purchase land habitat for the areas that we're disturbing as part of our project construction. Land and right-of-way acquisitions, again, the list is growing shorter. We have the friendly condemnation for Riverbank Road. That's the property where there's really no known owner, and so we've used the eminent domain process to obtain title for that property. We need to finalize the escrow for the regional water treatment facility site that we're purchasing from the city of Woodland. We need to finalize the lease agreement between Woodland and the agency for the solids drying bed site immediately east of the water treatment plant site. And we have two remaining property easements to complete: the Sierra Northern Railroad for the transverse easement. That's the one that goes perpendicular to the railroad tracks near the intake facility. And one remaining piece of property in Davis for the Davis treated water main. We have to complete our plan with Yolo County Farm Bureau to close Road 22. Currently scheduled to initiate the bid process for the intake facility construction in December. And Joe, that, as you mentioned, that's the RD 2035 that's leading that effort. And now that we have CH2M Hill on board, they are working diligently on their design, and we expect to receive their basis of design report and a 30% design from them in January. I want to spend just a quick minute explaining the updated cost that reflects the incorporation of the lower price that we received from CH2M Hill. The number that we've been reporting is $237 million. You've seen this many times. We first reported it in June at our June meeting, and that's the total project cost in 2013 dollars. The new number that I'm going to show you is $228.1 million. So we're going to go down over $9 million, and I'll show you how we got there. Let me back up. This $169 million in 2013 dollars is the construction cost line item that includes the DBO cost, and this is what we had in 2013 again. That's this number here. Of that $169 million from the June cost update. The DBO contract in 2013 dollars was $142.69. The remaining $26 million was the agency cost, inspection, etc. When you escalate that $142 million DBO contract cost from April 2013 dollars to escalated dollars, that's 151.5. That's the number that we had previously been talking about as the cap, the max cap for the DBO. And basically what this is if you take $142 million and you put it in the bank today and you're in 4% interest, you'd have enough money to pay $151.5 over the life of the contract. Well, with the new number in escalated dollars, it's $141.15 million. That's the amount of money that over the course of the contract we're going to pay to CH2M Hill. So this is the difference between the cap and the money that and the bid price that they gave us. If you take that and include that into the new construction cost estimate, our new capital cost number is $228.1 million. This is the number that we're going to now, with the board's concurrence, start reporting publicly. At your places, you have a newsletter that is going to be going into the the bill insert in both Davis and Woodland, and it has this new number in it. So just to summarize our progression of project cost estimates, back in June we were reporting a number of $350 million. The new number is $228.1 million, and that again is in April 2013 dollars. So I think a very good story to tell over the last several years in terms of our ability to bring down the cost.
Dennis, will you go back two slides? I mean, is our one more? Is that 151.5 number? Is that a new number? Or?
This is the number that back in June. This was the cap. This was what we set as a cap for CH2M Hill. We said you must
in that
come in under 150
for the bidders.
For the bidders, yeah.
Right, but then they came in at
141.2.
Okay.
10.3 million under budget.
I see. So right, okay.
How do you, Dennis, I'm just trying to
I'm
follow.
with you now. I'm sorry.
How do you get from that column that adds up to 160.24? Never mind, I got it.
Okay. So a little bit more detail than you were probably wanting to hear, but we wanted to make sure it was clear when we start reporting the $228 million how we got there and how it was calculated from our previous $237 million. And the final slide is our project schedule milestones. We got about 5 things we need to do in the next 2.5 years to make sure, 3 years, that we make sure we get the project done, starting with the SRF funding, advertising and awarding the joint intake, obtaining our remaining environmental permits, awarding the joint intake construction contract, and then our acceptance testing of the overall project in September of 2016. So happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Anybody? Dennis, I did want to ask. One of the pieces that was going on a couple months ago that we've directed is Terra Verde making the assessment of the a possible use of renewables at the site and kind of assessing whether that's feasible, what the return on investment would be. What's the status of that, and when might we kind of reconvene the Woodland and Davis experts that were kind of tracking on that process?
Yeah, I had a conversation with them about 3 weeks ago where we refined the scope or the exact tasks related to the renewable energies. Interestingly, in talking with RD 2035, maybe a CPG, but they're also interested in perhaps a solar facility somewhere on the ranch. So I put Terra Verde in contact with them to have some preliminary conversations. I can't remember offhand, Joe, what the exact date they're going to deliver that assessment is, but I can find out and let you know.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like it to be added on to onto the update report so that we can track it. And I'm not sure how time sensitive it is at all for syncing with the project design and CH2M Hill. I think it's not, right? It's kind of an independent issue. But I'd like to just have it there so we keep it in mind.
We'll make sure on our next update that we cover that in a little more detail.
Okay, good. All right. Any other questions? Good. All right. Thank you, Dennis, very much. Okay, we move now to item 4. This is consider approval of the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency RD 2035 Joint Intake Operations Agreement. And
I'm going to cover that one, Mr. Chairman. Bit of background: in 2010, as you know, the agency entered into a joint intake development agreement with RD 2035 covering the scope of funding, design, operation, construction of the new intake. One of the things that was deferred in that 2010 contract was, who and how is the new intake going to be operated? And what's before you today is a contract with 2035 that answers that question. The project, for purposes of design and operation, has been split into 3 parts. There's going to be the separate RD 2035 pumps and valves and electric components. There's going to be separate agency pumps, valves, and electric components. But then there's going to be a common set of improvements that benefit both agencies, principally the fish screen and associated equipment and the main building and other just common joint facilities. And the question is, who's going to operate the joint stuff? And this agreement is the agreement that governs that. The parties have agreed that operation responsibility ought to be taken over by the agency. The agency intends to fold this operations component into the CH2M Hill contract. The CH2M Hill contract that you approved in October includes operation of the intake in anticipation of this contract. And the contract lays out in some detail about designating the agency as operator, explains how the agency is going to operate it, what terms govern the operation. The agreement provides for budget and cost sharing and billing by the agency to RD 2035. Most of the operation cost will be split 80-20 based on the parties' relative capacity of the facility. The agreement includes a provision, Dennis talked about this in his staff report, about taking advantage and sharing the lower-priced WAPA power. This agreement is the mechanism by which that process would be implemented. The term of the agreement, it's contemplated that this essentially would be an indefinite agreement. We'll just continue this operation marriage until the parties decide otherwise. A lot of other details in the contract that I could go over if you'd like, but other than that, I'll just see if the board has any questions or if you'd like more detail on the proposed contract.
Others? I think we've been marching toward this for a while and tracking on it, so if it's the recommendation of staff with no big issues, feels comfortable to me. Okay, good. So motion here then in order?
Correct. There's a recommended motion in the staff report.
So I'll move the staff recommendation.
Second?
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, 3-0. Thank you very much. One more big step. Right. Moving to item 5, approval of the resolution authorizing general manager to approve certain changes to orders, other actions, CH2M Hill DBO service contract.
Yes, this is a requested resolution to delegate to staff the authority for certain change provisions associated with the service contract. Specifically, the resolution asks for the authority to be delegated to the general manager for no-cost changes, clarifications, consents, and approvals. It requests the ability to extend the contract time by up to a total of 60 days. It requests individual change order amounts up to $75,000 with a cumulative maximum of 1% of the contract price, so it's $1.4 million. And then finally, it requests authorization for the agency to approve additional storage and pumping capacity for the City of Woodland, subject to the City of Woodland's prior approval.
Okay.
The reason for the request is to make sure that we're able to provide timely decision-making and responses to CH2M Hill, avoid any situations where a delay in a timely response would either add time or cost to the existing contract. The amount of authority that we're seeking in terms of the change order budget is well within the contingency that is included in our overall $228 million project cost.
Okay. Others?
Second?
Okay, moved by Director Davies and seconded by Vice Chair Marble. You know, I guess as I scanned through it, and you alluded to it, Dennis, the only thing that jumped out at me was the 1% kind of level on the changes that we're delegating. You know, 75K at a time, but 1.4 million starts sounding a little bit high to me. And I guess my question would be whether we anticipate anything of that magnitude or getting close to that limit where we really wouldn't have a chance to run it by the board.
No, at this time we don't anticipate any changes of that magnitude. There are, as we've discussed before, much fewer opportunities for change with the design build operate contract than with the traditional design bid build. The one area where there could be some issues, we don't anticipate them, but there would be with unforeseen soil conditions or other unforeseen changes that are allowed relief under the contract. Maybe what I would propose is that we, at our regular meetings, we provide the board with a running tally of change orders that have been issued, so that the board gets a comfort level as to how quickly we're making changes and for what reasons. And then if the board wanted, additional information or wanted to revise it, they could do that based on that regular reporting that we would provide.
Yeah, I think that would be good. But we still have this still kind of opens the door for you to make an $800,000 change to the contract without.
No, it would be $75,000.
75 is the cap, so then
Right.
it's
Right.
Cumulative.
It's cumulative.
Cumulative.
Up to
Yeah.
okay.
So we would provide you a monthly.
Okay. So then we'd
printout.
we'd see. Okay. So we have a friendly amendment to the motion, just specifying that at each of our meetings or monthly, you'll provide.
I would either whatever the board would like.
Yeah, let's just say at each of our meetings there'll be an update on any changes approved by the general manager.
Accept the modification.
Okay.
Sounds
Seconder?
great.
Okay. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay. Item 6 is acceptance of the aerosol study report regarding the facility.
As the board will recall, this study was requested by the Health Department to determine the extent to which microbial aerosols that are potentially harmful to human health that are generated at the wastewater plant in Woodland could be transported to the water treatment plant site. We hired the firm of Kleinfelder West in partnership with UC Davis. They went through a very extensive study process where they determined the microbes of concern. They looked at meteorological data, did sampling, collection and analysis, and then data analysis. They developed a computer model, and they prepared the report that's in your packet here this afternoon. The conclusions of the study are that study-targeted pathogens were aerosolized at the wastewater plant, but the targeted pathogens did not show up at the new water treatment plant site. They did model human-associated fecal bacteria that was aerosolized at the wastewater plant and transported to the water treatment plant site, indicating that it's possible that biological material could be transported to the water treatment plant site. They also, their modeling showed that any bioaerosols leaving the wastewater plant site would be 100 to 200 times less at the water treatment plant site. I think it's also important, and is documented in the study, the risks to the water treatment plant processes that are uncovered is very minimal, very low, and the processes that are the important processes, the filtering and the disinfection, once the filtering takes place, the treated water goes into either pipelines or covered storage and disinfected and transmitted to the two cities. So the next steps, assuming the board accepts the report, is to transmit it to the California Department of Public Health for their review and any comment they may have.
Okay. I've got two quick questions, but others? Does anything change given that the CH2M Hill design came back with the use of the outdoor settling basins? I mean,
No.
I think you just
No.
answered that, in
No.
that the exposed things.
That's a byproduct. That's not
That's post.
the solids drying bed is
Yeah.
a waste that's taken out of the
Okay.
water, so that doesn't affect it at all. No.
Okay. And then, this is more kind of just by a point of comparison, but it would strike me, given the low, power or whatever, and the high improbability that what could be coming from the wastewater plant via the aerosols, is orders of magnitude less than what's in the input water that's just coming in from the river. Is that?
No, that observation has been made in that, a lot of the fecal matter or contaminants they're in the raw water would be the same or similar to what's being transported.
Right.
And that's why I think it's important, and what we point out in the report is that once it goes through the filtering process, which is one of the most
purpose.
important steps, is it's all enclosed and disinfected downstream.
Okay. So we need a motion to accept the report?
Yes.
Okay.
Second?
Moved by Director Davies, seconded by Vice Chair Marble. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion approved. Long-range board calendar, and Bill sent us an email earlier today with some of his date issues. And what do we need to?
December the 19th, I will be out of state. And I could call in if we were set up in a way that I could conference in. That's always a little disjointed to do that, but I would be available to do that. I could also be available December 12th, December 16th, or December 17th. And we do have an alternate who faithfully attends our meetings and could also be here in my absence if the December 19th date can't be changed and it was deemed best for not to try to do the conferencing.
Excuse me, Bill, what were those dates again? December 12th?
16 and 17.
Okay, thanks.
And I sent you a conflict. Let me just say it so it's.
Later in the.
I have a copy of the memo that Bill sent, so we get. Yeah.
So you have the memo about the February meeting. I'll be at a League Board of Directors meeting. Can't conference in at that time. And then in May, the date that's been set for May, I have dental meetings that I have to attend that day that are out, in Southern California, so I would not be available.
To staff, are there any of these meetings that we think might not be needed? As we've.
Yeah, I think as we get past the first of the year, I think it's highly probable that we won't need a meeting every month. I think what's on the agenda for December, the important items are the two remaining agreements with RD 2035, the water amendment and the construction agreement, and we hope to have those negotiated and before the board at the December meeting. Of course, any SRF funding would either in December or January would also be important. And as I mentioned during the project update, we do want to get a contract approved for our construction assurance team. Those are the ones that really are most important over the next couple of months. As we get out into early next year, less time sensitive.
Yeah, so I mean, there's no obvious meeting, you know, the March meeting or the February meeting or the March meeting to assume, you know, maybe by the time we get to May, we might be, you know, seeing some light of day. But there's no reason to believe that February, March are necessarily, and we don't have a need in April to make a change.
I think we have more flexibility in February than we will have in December. I think it's possible that there'll be few, if any, time-sensitive items in February. It's really the next couple months that are most important.
Well, you know, I'm completely open just on my calendar with, you know, Lynn Ann working with Lorraine and so on, and I'm pretty good in February. So I think it's up to Woodland to decide if we want Bill to call in or have Jim participate to stick with the 19th. But if you guys want to move that date around for your purposes, that's fine with me.
Why don't we, Lynn Ann can poll the board members and see what the availability is and go from there.
Good. I mean, and then in January we move ahead. February, maybe cross that bridge when we get to it. You do have a...
Yeah, I gave, the dates I indicated in February are the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 18th,
Great.
which surround the 20th if we needed to meet in February, but if that could be put off till March or April, those dates are all good.
Okay. Good. Okay. I don't think there's further discussion needed there.
No,
Okay.
I think we'll follow up and find dates that work for the board.
Okay. Correspondence. We've got this public health letter, Dennis, in the packet here, of course. Anything do you want to mention that letter briefly?
There's just the letter that's already in your packet. I just wanted to mention, in addition, there's a couple of items at your places. There's a memorandum from the Ferguson Group that describes the activities that Director Marble and I participated in back in Washington last week. And then also, as I mentioned in my update, there's a copy of the newsletter that's going to be included in the Woodland and Davis bills in the coming months.
Okay. Good. Technical Advisory Committee comments? Anything?
On Tuesday, staff met with the DBO firm, CH2M Hill and OVRA, and we had a partnering session. It was our first opportunity for the two staffs to really get together and talk and spend time. We spent the entire day together, and I think it's safe to say that they have a very cohesive and talented team, and we're looking forward to working together with them through this project.
Great. Very good. Okay. Board comments? Anything?
I'll maybe just a couple comments about the opportunity Dennis and I had to participate in these meetings. I think that the fundamental reassurances that first of all, it gave us an opportunity to thank our congressional delegation personally for their instrumental role, not only in getting appropriated the $13+ million that's already been appropriated, but their role in stimulating the state to come up with the $10 million that they came up with. We would not be where we're at now had that state money not come through, and Bureau has made that pretty clear to us. Second of all, I think it just seemed like we are moving to obtain the other 3.35 million. And the only glitch that I saw was what I mentioned previously in our discussions with the Senate and the House subcommittees that deal with energy and water and that deal with the funding for the fish screens. They both said, anything could happen January 15th, and we all saw what sequestration did before. So we just, I think, need to hope that we don't get in that kind of a mess, which could impact the 14 budget, which is where we are hoping and anticipating the $3.35 million will come from. I think the other comment is that we as a board really need to work hard together with our state legislators on the remaining $6+ million that we need to get from the state to produce their match to bring us to the $16+ million from both the state and the federal government. And so that'll be our work going forward.
Thank you. Thank you for going. I mean, it seems to me in this enterprise, you can't say thank you enough to hold the coalition together, which is so spectacular. Skip, anything? Good. Sid?
Yeah. I just want to mention that we're working with Diane and the city. We know the city is getting ready to move forward their local distribution network. And obviously, it would be the right time for us to decide, if we can, whether we're going to exercise our option to take water. So we're working with Diane, with our consultants, to include as kind of an ad alternate in the environmental review the city's doing for the local distribution network, also the university's piece there. And then we're starting to work with Dennis so that in the January, February timeframe, we can kind of bring the question about, are we going to be in or out, so that we can stay on the city of Davis's schedule for doing the local distribution facilities. So we're working on that now. We've also just allocated about $230,000 towards the environmental review, and also to move our local design effort along, so that in that time frame when the city of Davis is making the decision, if we can then hopefully be at the right point that if we make that final decision, that we can then move right along with you and having our design and moving it forward on the same time schedule. The framework we're looking at for us making our decision is the campus is putting together its overall long-term capital improvement plan. And so we will put this try to put this in the context of that overall plan, so that the decision can be made. There are always limited funds for capital projects, and that this can be then put into that overall decision. So that's what we're striving for right now.
Great.
That's the best news short of a decision. So, thank you for reporting that non-decision to us. No, that really is good news, Sid, and thank you very much.
The fact that we've allocated $230,000 to keep the process moving means it's being considered very seriously. So.
Good. Thank you very, very much.
You bet.
See, I had one question for Dennis. I had kind of thought that post our DBO approval at the last meeting, we would be putting out a press release announcing CH2M Hill, and unless I'm missing something in my email, I didn't see it, and I'd queried Kim about it. Did we decide to hold off on?
No, we did issue a press release, as I recall, after the October 10th meeting. I don't recall it got much action, but
okay.
We did. We have this newsletter which talks about it. The other thing along those lines I should mention is we do have a Meet the Contractor workshop scheduled for January 23rd.
Oh, good.
So that'll be another opportunity, and we will advertise that as well.
Okay. Yeah, Lynn, will you send it to me? Again, I'd just like to have it in my file. I searched for it a couple times, and I'm not quite sure why it's not coming up.
The press release after? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously we'll be putting together all kinds of pieces for the intake ceremony, coming up. So, okay. All right. With that, I think we're ready to adjourn. Anything further? Good. All right. Stand adjourned.